Stuff up there. Oh, it's got all the stuff up there. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Jerry McIntosh, and this is Community Conversation. Tonight, we got some good guests that we're going to have.
I think we lost Jerry by way of lightning, thunder or something.
Wow.
And he's the host, so yeah, well, I don't think we're live. Wow. Miss Carol gave us.
But we're still live on Facebook.
Yeah, Miss Carol gave us the heads up that they had the lightning out there, but I think y'all.
Well, let's continue with the show.
Okay, all right. Well,
they'll come back in with this.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm Bill Snow, author, activist. With us tonight, as Jerry was so eloquently stating, that we had some very special guests, of which he will introduce. I dare not go in and introduce in Jerry's place this special guest that we have. So, Jerry, welcome back. Take it away.
You're muted.
Okay, then. I'm Jerry McIntosh, and this is Community Conversation. Let me introduce our host, Mr. Bill Snow, who is the author of the great book From the Projects to the Boardroom. We have Mr. Derek Scott, who is with the Black Caucus and also the White House Task Force on COVID. I see we have Miss Jill Lewis Dagg that's with us tonight, who is the treasurer of Okaloosa County State Committee. Also, Carol McIntosh, who is former educator, principal, administrator. We have Mr. Vernon Watson, who is the owner of WBQP TV, and where you'll be watching this show on channel 53.4, Roku, YouTube, and Fire Stick. So we're gonna get at it, Carol.
All right, ready? Hello, y'all. How are y'all doing?
Excellent.
Oh, how are you?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, we're glad to have you, Jill. Hey, coming on, because we need that knowledge that you have. Okay, keep coming. Also, Bill, you had a wonderful show. Kind of tell everybody what happened and how it went and everything like that.
Miss Carol, thank you so much for this opportunity to say thanks to everyone. I had my fourth comedy show on Saturday night. It was a blast. It is on my Facebook wall. You can watch it in its entirety. But we had a packed house and we had some good, clean, fun comedy. The name of my comedy show is Who Says Christians Can't Have Fun? And we laughed, we rocked. I'm telling you, we had a dynamic time. But to IJS Nation that follows and watch me on my Facebook page, especially the Our Voices in the Community Conversation, thank y'all so much. You guys have been on me about doing another show. And I really thought in my spirit that you were just talking, but the way you showed up, the way you bought tickets, the way tickets sold at the door, sincere, thank you, I'm humbled.
Yeah, I saw when you were promoting and you're selling all the tickets, I saw that big sign behind you that had a picture of Bill Snow. That was awesome, Bill. That was really nice. And we're so proud to even know you and be a part, that you are a part of Our Voices, the People's Media.
Miss Carol, you just gave me Holy Spirit chills with that, because the honor is truly all mine. You asked me 6 years ago as I was promoting my book on this great show to come and co-host with you guys. And I actually look forward to Sunday nights because people recognize me all over. And of all the things I've done, they mostly recognize me from the Our Voices talk show. Mr. Williams, of whom we'll have on tonight. I met him at the Get Out the Vote at the Movement for Change on last Saturday. And I was telling him how it was my pleasure to meet him. He said, oh, I know who you are because I watched the Our Voices talk show. So it's been a pleasure and an honor. Like Jerry and I oftentimes say, regardless, holidays, what have you, the show goes on. That's how we do it over here in Hollywood, Pensacola. We must continue to be on because we have to inform and transform.
That's right. Bill always says, no matter what, the show will go on if it's just him and Jerry, or if it's just him. So I thought, okay, fine. But we're so happy to have you. Derek, we're just giving a little introductions before we really get into the hard-hitting part of the show. How have you been doing and what's going on with you?
I've been doing well. Thank you for asking. I hope everybody on the panel is doing well as our viewing audience. Yeah, as you know, we are in the thick of primary season for the election. So that has been my life all the way around, whether it's working in the capacity as vice chair of the Escambia Democratic Party, or second vice president for the Black Caucus, or even on the state committee as community outreach chair. It's all focused on this election, making sure that everybody is getting out to vote, making sure everybody understands the importance of voting and why it is important to vote in this primary election and how it impacts you as the voting public. So that's been my focus. I'll say it's been a lot of work. Once we get to Tuesday, I'll be a little happy to take a small breather for a couple of days and then pick it back up, because August is just the primary. We still have a general election in November, so we got to pick back up for then. But at least it gives us a few minutes to say, and then we can see where we're going and give us some a little bit of a better direction as how we need to attack the November elections and what we focus on that for.
And we've been having back-to-back rallies each Saturday for the last 2 Saturdays. It's been interesting. It's a lot of work that goes into it. A lot of people see the final product, but it's a lot of work that goes into putting together these rallies and making sure everything come out right and getting people there. We got people to the polls this weekend. We had Rise to the Poll. The last weekend, we were just giving information on how to get, what they need to vote, how to get there, where their polling places was at, how to, they wanted questions about different candidates so they can make an informed decision on who they wanted to vote for. So we were doing all that, giving them resources so that they could make sure they had the Escambia County Guide for to take with them to read and understand what they need to do, all of the information that they would need to getting to the poll.
Yeah. And can I just say, I just want to say a special thank you to all of you all here on this panel, starting particularly with Mr. and Ms. McIntosh for allowing us to use Movement for Change for the facility. And Ms. McIntosh was in the kitchen doing her thing with the hamburgers and the hot dogs and the fish and the chicken, and you guys worked tirelessly for that for the last up until for these last 2 weekends, and that doesn't go unnoticed. And I just want to say thank you for your work and contribution on that, and as well as you, Brother Watson, for being out there and with us for those 2 periods. Thank you for that. It was awesome. It was amazing. And we thank you. And Jill and Bill, thank you for your efforts. Y'all have been wonderful. I think the whole weekend, both weekends went well, but this past weekend was absolutely phenomenal.
Absolutely wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. And I got to ask Bernie, we asked everybody, what's been going on?
Same old thing, Carol, same old thing. Nothing exciting.
Just bringing in money.
Just trying to get the excitement of the election here. Hopefully to turn out.
Yeah, we hope they turn out too. We have another person I want to ask about. She's new to our voices, the People's Media, and hopefully I'm trying to get her to continue to be one of the newer co-hosts. We're gonna let her try it out, and hopefully she'll join us. But tell us a little bit about yourself, Jill.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. And it's just an honor and a pleasure to join you guys. I have watched you via Facebook and put my little comments in. So to be a part of the team, it's awesome. I am actually the treasurer for the State Democratic Black Caucus. I am the state committee woman for Okaloosa County. I am the DEC outreach. I'm part of diversity and inclusion for the FDP. I am a co-chair for one of the FDP clubs caucuses. I kind of in every group there is. I usually have the title that says community unity activist because that's what I am. I believe that there is a way for everyone in certain circumstances to get along. For instance, we all want clean water. You don't want purple water. You don't want red water. You don't want blue water. We want clean water. We want education. So as long as we're looking at get a seat at the table, I say I want a seat at the table, but I don't just want a seat at the table. I want everybody to have a seat at the table. I want to be the one cooking the food, and I want to know what's on the menu. So we have to make and allow ourselves to be that. But I did really like, Bill, what you said. You said that you're here to inform and transform. And I think that's what this opportunity to vote and use your voice is about. You can get educated and be informed, and then you can transform our community. So I'm honored to be here and hope that I can be influential to make sure that people know how important it is to get out and vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Well, we have now on with us, and we're so glad and honored. We have David Williams. I know David Williams very well. We went and got our a specialist.
Master's degree. Yeah, master's specialist.
That's the master's specialist degree.
Yes.
UWF years ago, and so it's good to have you. This is David Williams, and he's a candidate running for the school board District 3 position. And how are you doing, David? I know you're tired.
I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. Can you hear me good? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you.
Mm-hmm. Are you kind of
Yes.
now as we get closer to the day, the final day?
Look, I'll be able to get some sleep finally and get some rest. It's been the best diet I've ever had. I've lost about 15 pounds.
Oh, that's good. That's a good thing. Well, David, kind of tell us a little bit about yourself so that the people will know you as a person.
Yes, and thank you for having me on. Thank both of you. I've admired watching both of you and seen both of you do so much in the education system in our community, and I just enjoy listening to both of you. I'm a native Pensacolian, grew up in Pensacola, went through the public school system here, A.A. Dixon, Brownsville, Pensacola High, left and went to Southern University on a basketball scholarship, came back here in '86, started teaching math at Pensacola High School. Well, before then, I was a substitute teacher for about 2 or 3 years. And got hired at Pensacola High School as math teacher, head basketball coach. Spent 35 years there at Pensacola High School, and I graduated from Pensacola High School. I know that doesn't happen very often. Spent 18 years in the classroom, and then 17 years in administration. I did everything from bus driver, substitute teacher, math teacher, athletic coach. I was chairman of the accreditation committee, 10-year accreditation when I was a teacher. Went from the classroom to assistant principal. That doesn't happen very often. And then had the opportunity to become principal at Pensacola High School. All of it at one school, all of it has been in District 3. I grew up in District 3, worship in District 3, live in District 3. And I like to tell people that I either know, taught, went to school with, coached, or was principal of just about everybody, every family, and every student in District 3. So about 5 or 6 years ago, when I signed those drop papers, I still had some gas left in the tank, but I knew my time as principal was coming to an end, and I wanted to stay involved. I broached the thought about running for school board about 5 years ago with some friends and relatives, and it was encouraging. And so I felt like in the past, I've made a great difference being an administrator, a coach, and a teacher, and I want to continue to do that with the 12 schools in District 3. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm the fifth of 6 boys born to Hollis Williams. Hollis Williams, of course, was the first African-American appointed and elected city councilman in the city of Pensacola. Very proud of that. We have a park named after him that runs along 110 interstate. So I never thought I'd be in politics. I'm an educator, trying to be a politician. So that's David Williams in a nutshell.
You mentioned your father, Hollis T. Williams, and you stated that he taught you a lot of wisdom. There are some tidbits that he taught you.
Yeah.
Share some of that with us.
Yeah, one of the things I learned from my dad is that you see good in everybody. You speak the positive. I mean, we have enough negative stuff going on. He was one of the most positive people, encouraging people I've ever known, and I think that really helped me in my as a teacher, as a coach, and as an administrator. Because, and Carol, and they told us when we went through grad school that we make about 300 decisions a day,
Right.
and if you write on 70% of those, you're a highly effective administrator. But if you put 70% on a grading scale, we'll see. But you just do what you can while you can and put people first. My father loved kids. He loved the community. I grew up at the YMCA. That's where he worked for like 50 some years at the YMCA before he went on to the city council, and just made great community connections. I love this community. I love District 3. I love what I do. I'm an educator. And I speak positively things. I mean, we know how bad things are. We know that things can be better, but I want to speak about the greatness that we can do in District 3, help these 12 schools become as good as they can. I was looking at the school grades today. We had a couple of them that dropped, had a couple of them that maintained. We're still trying to recover from that COVID, the 2.5 years. I wish the state of Florida had suspended school grades at least for 2 or 3 more years, because that's how long it's going to take for us to really recover and get kids back acclimated to where they were. That 2 years we were out of school, it had a devastating effect, not only just on us physically, but educational wise, we are still catching up.
Yeah, I want to say something before we go farther, that I'm not switching over to the full view because we have a problem and I don't want to drop out like I did earlier. So
Okay.
just like it is. And so you won't see the switching out. And I hate that because I want to get close up on you, but you're
No
doing
problem.
it, David.
Okay.
And so with that being said, why are you running? I know you talked about all of the things. You've lived in District 3.
Yeah.
It says you were educated in District 3. You grew up and lived there. You worship in District 3. You worked as a coach and a principal, and everything was District 3. So you said you retired, but you weren't finished with what you wanted to do. So you said,
Right.
okay, let's run. How did your family and particularly your wife and your children feel about that?
Well, they've been very supportive. As you know, Carol, administrators, it takes a lot of time.
Yes.
You can't leave it at school. It's going to follow you home a lot of times. This is one more thing that I've asked my family to do. When I was a basketball coach, there was long nights, long days. When I was a teacher, long night, long days. Principal, administrator, long night, long days. I think they're used to me being gone and probably glad I'm out of the house
No, I don't.
and doing some things. But it's just in my blood, Carol and Jerry. I mean, I'm an educator. I mean, regardless of the outcome of this election, I'm still going to be working for District 3 in the school system, listening to you guys. I'm not necessarily blowing smoke here, but one reason I love listening to, especially Jerry in the morning when he's on WRNE, is that he speaks with facts and with research, and he doesn't come with something has not been researched or that's factual, and it's good when you speak from that type of foundation. You can build on it, and what I want to do, I want to close the achievement gap. I did that. I've closed the achievement gap at Pensacola High School when I was principal. Graduation rate for all students was 61%. By the time I retired, it was 92. Also the graduation rate for African American students was 53. By the time I retired, it was 88%. I feel like I can make a difference. I can change the trajectory of the students. And one of the ways we did that is by getting involved with students and getting to know them. And like I said, and y'all know this, that when you breathe life into kids and you get to know them, know their situation, break down some barriers, you can change their trajectory. They don't all have to fail. They don't all have to get discipline referrals. And I want to be proactive. I don't want to wait till something happen before we start reacting and say, hey, because a lot of times my hands was tied as a administrator, and I stuck my neck out for a lot of kids when they came time for me to make that decision whether they stay or go. And I made contracts with them, and I made agreements with them, or covenants, whatever. Look, you got to give me this, meet me halfway, and and I felt like I've been able to do that, and I felt like I've been fair and with everybody, and I got into this because I want to make a difference. I just love the school system. And I say they're hurting right now, but it's just difficult times. It's just the money shortage, the shortage of teachers, shortage of cafeteria workers, shortage of bus drivers, custodians. And I've been keeping up with things. Even now, the buses are overloaded right now because they got bus drivers taking on 2 and 3 different routes than they used to. And so I just want to help. I just want to help. Public school system has been good to me, and I just want to be in a position to help.
David, with the shortage of, I know it's a shortage of teachers nationwide. Do you think it's because it's a lack of adequate pay to teachers, especially here in the state of Florida, that teachers are not, coming to this area the way, we think they ought to be?
I think there's a lot of issues going on with that. I'd like to bag up. I think one of the things that hurt the profession while we lost so many teachers, that we lost tenure, because now everybody's annual contract. I mean, when I retired, man, almost 60% of my faculty was annual contract. If you had a teacher that had put in 10, 12, 15 years, they would think differently about changing professions. But since they're annual contract now, then they may just leave. But yes, compensation is very important. I've looked at Governor DeSantis. I think he had like 10 to 12 things he wanted to do. One of them was increase teacher pay. Another thing is it's just so difficult to be a teacher. The tests are expensive. One of the things I wish we could change is the waiting period. You take a test and you don't pass it, you got to wait 30 days before you take it again. And that goes against everything we've taught as teachers when we have students in our classroom. When we want our students to pass that test, we don't wait 30 days to give them another test. We're going to test them in a couple of days. And then we're going to try to help them pass. And I think that's what we need to be doing, is trying to help them pass it. Yes, money is an issue, but also with that money issue, we need to compensate the veteran teachers that's been in the system, because you got the.
Did he just go out?
Yes.
Gosh, so he was just getting started. He's gonna come back in, but you all, while we're waiting on him, if you have any questions, feel free to jump in there.
I wanted to ask him about the people that's coming, that's supposed to, the scientists want military people to come in and teach, who has no experience in education whatsoever. I'm not kicking the ones that probably could teach, but the majority have no experience in teaching. And so that's going to hurt the students, as a matter of fact, especially African-American students. And what he was saying that, and we've been talking about this for a while, the students are already behind, 2 years behind, as a matter of fact. And now you're going to put somebody there that don't have no experience in education and teaching and knowing how to deal with children. When you train in the military, you train really to go to war mostly and to defend the country. And hopefully, go ahead, Vern.
I don't really understand the rationale for that. That there are certain military people are trained to teach, but they're very few and far and in between, because they do a lot of teaching. But I don't think that was his name. I don't understand the theory behind it. As many substitute teachers that we have in the system, why don't they just hire the substitute teachers to do that job?
Yeah.
And what you're doing is really negating exactly what the individual has to go through. They're actually trying to be a principal. They have to go to college for 4 years. They have the test. Then they have to have a portfolio. I don't know if they still do that. It's all stuff they have to go through. But now you're bypassing that and letting certain other individuals just go into that classroom with no experience. And we've moved on to Jeremy.
I was going to ask you, how did you feel about people coming into the classroom have no teachers experience? You know, I know DeSantis talking about bringing in military people who have not went through the rigor of going to school to be a teacher. And now you're saying you're going to put these people in an environment that they have no experience with or how to handle children, because there's a lot of psychology that go into that as well.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm gonna tell you, and Karen probably can attest to this, because I've hired people that were military. Some of the military people were great, and some of them they didn't know what they were getting into.
Right.
Because in the military, you know, you give an order and people follow it. Public school system not necessarily that case.
That's right.
I felt like and I understand the politics of it. That's how I'm looking at what that was. It was more of to me a political move to make sure, you know, he stays in good stead with the military. I get it, but I would like to see people that have degrees. Let's make it a little bit easier for people to change profession. If you have a degree, let's make it where the person with a degree can come in and teach. I think it's going to be an eye-opening experience for some of those people that's going to come into that classroom, because classroom is not like when we came up. The school influenced the community when we came up. Everything that's happening in the community now is influencing what we do in the school system. It affects us in every type of way. I wish he had a different plan than what he came up with, because we've got a lot of teachers that I feel like people that would make great teachers that have degrees. If we can make it accessible for them to become a teacher,
right,
have an alternative route. Another thing I propose, I was interviewed some time ago, I proposed this. You know, sometimes people have trouble passing the exams. Well, you know, after 3 times, let's come up with a different solution. Let's come up with, hey, you've got to go take this class at Pensacola State or UWF. We can still hire you, but you got to complete this, because some of the stuff, and I've seen the test, some of the things they have to take on that test, you might have had it 15 years ago. And you might not be very good at math or whatever the case may be. So
Juice boxes.
Are there no criteria? That only thing you have to be is a veteran?
I think they have to have 60 hours or something like that.
feedback.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it was 60 hours. I think they had to have 60 hours of schooling or credits on a college level. Not necessarily have to have a degree. Now, I'll tell you, and in the school system here in Pensacola, but this is usually for vocation. They're called a conditional contract. Like when I went through high school, my welding teacher didn't have a degree, but he had like 25 years of experience as a welder. And so they kind of, I guess you call it, grandfathered him in because he had so much experience. And it's called conditional contract. Oh, no, locally certified. That's what they call it. They locally certified those people but that was usually just reserved for vocation, like air conditioning, heating, welding, and sheet metal, auto mechanic, that type of thing. You know, we can offer conditional contracts to people who are not totally certified but have a degree.
You know, also when you think about, you know, everybody is like trying to educate everybody to go to college, but you know, you got academies that people need to go through as well, where they get the tools that they need that they will last them a lifetime. And that was one of the cornerstones that helped build the African-American middle class, because people had skills. And so I think we have to make sure that they are able to get into those academies as well.
Yeah. David, 5 years though, 5 years, you know, they're giving them the military 5 years to be in that class. So that's a long time.
That's a long time.
Before you have to be certified. And the next thing about it is that they're also offering this to spouses. You know, they're not thinking about any kind of criteria. It's just let them go in the classroom and it's going to be hurting our children. Are you going to think about that? And what
Yes.
could you
Yes.
do if you
But
were on a District 3 city council post?
But they need, school board, professional development. And it's not, it's kind of frustrating because you just can't, I was trained, I went through the teacher training and all of that. My bachelor's degree was in business. So I went back to UWF and got certified to become a teacher, took all those courses. And even with all that training, all them courses I took, when I went into that classroom, it was a different world. It was just different. And you know what? You can't fool kids. And they know if you know what you're doing. They know if you know what you're talking. You can't fool them.
You're
and
right.
So I think it's going to be more difficult than what they think it's going to be. It's going to help out with the numbers. It's going to help out with having a warm body in the classroom. Is that what's best for our students? It's untested. It's untried.
Right.
We don't know. I hope it's successful, but I feel like we could have gotten people with a degree and help them become certified and make it, I say easier, but make it more applicable where they can change profession. I'm concerned. Let me tell you that I'm concerned now. I will be boisterous about that because our kids deserve to have good teachers.
That's right.
And trained teachers. We just don't need to have a warm body in there saying we are now, cutting down the numbers of lack of teachers in the state of Florida. I'm all for the military. I'm not against the military.
Right. That's
love them.
Right.
So this is not a knock on military. But I am for what's best for our students. I don't think you do this in many other professions. A doctor, or even taking my car to a mechanic. I don't know if we would do this in another profession. Why are we doing this education?
Right. Speaking of a different world, Samuel X. Clark on our Facebook stream weighs in with those who are there are overworked watching classes that do not have a teacher on the breaks, and a couple with the principal harassment of teachers, many more will quit, especially with low pay. But Francine Mathis weighs in with, I support David Williams, you have my vote. I love your plans and ideas of our schools in Escambia County.
Well, David, I know you have 3 priorities. We're going to talk about the first one, which is school safety. And as I was reading, I saw something about a campus hardening that you spoke about. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
What happened? A lot of these initiatives came out after the Marjorie Douglas shooting in South Florida, and there was some funding that was available. That hardening is just putting up more security cameras, putting up more gates, making sure there's only one access in, having a system of checks and balances. When visitors come on campus, everybody gets a business pass, has to present their ID. And a lot of times when I was principal, man, you'd be surprised the number of people that have some type of something in their background, and we couldn't allow them to come in because once we got that ID, the hardening of the school is just making the school more safe. What we try to do is make sure all the fence lines are visible, that you cut down all of the brush around it, making sure that, like I say, just one way in, one way out. We increase the number of cameras on campus. Most schools have done that. If you drive around, I'll tell you a good example. If you drive by West Florida High School and look at the structure that's in front, that was part of that hardening funding that the state of Florida did after the shooting of Marjorie Douglas. And so we did extensive training on active shooters, lockdown procedures, code red, code yellow. We had about 5 or 6 different colors that we went to. And we just tried to be vigilant. We made sure in the line of sight of that if there was an active shooter on campus, if they looked through a window, they couldn't see anybody. And so that's hardening of the schools and making sure that kids are safe. Now, I've met with Chief Randall, Chief Simmons, and I've talked to them and wanted to get their input on school safety, because we've got to build that relationship with our law enforcement officers, resource officers, and making sure our school is safe, because one of the reasons enrollment is going down, and it is, in public school system, is that some parents feel as though their child is not safe in a public school system. So we've got to make sure that school safety is first and paramount. Parents have got to have confidence that we're going to take care of them, make sure they're safe, and make sure they're treated fairly. Yes.
So what about the police? You said you work closely with law enforcement. We were speaking with someone came on the show a couple of weeks ago, and we're talking about the fact that if there were problems in the classroom, say there's a fight in the classroom, the first thing that should happen is that the police should be called. Do you have that belief that the police should be called to the school every time there's a fight?
No.
The law enforcement in the school kind of law enforcement in the school all the time? Or
No.
do you,
Well, they're there to protect us. We have administrative deans that should be handling those district problems. When it escalates to a point of that's in a fray, I didn't have the power to say arrest that kid. I mean, matter of fact, I could be taken into court if I said we would arrest every kid that fought. I mean, you have to really go case by case, investigate, get witnesses. Law enforcement will be brought in if it's deemed that it was to that magnitude, and then we would go through the process of making sure that we had a discipline meeting. You know, what I did when I was a principal, I always met with my deans and administrators before we put a kid up for removal. What have we done? What can be done? Did we drop the ball anywhere? Did we communicate with parents? Was the kid treated fairly?
Right.
Did he have due process?
Absolutely.
Did he have a chance to tell his side of the story? And we didn't rush to judgment, but I was very firm and consistent. I told kids fighting has no place on our campus, to the point where we almost never had fights. I mean, it was very rare that we had fights. Now, they might have fought down the street around the corner, but we pretty much stopped it on campus because we just had a firm stance on that. But I am one for taking it case by case, not necessarily a blanket saying every fighter will be put up for removal, because that's why we have cameras. We looked at the cameras. We had the witnesses, and we interviewed the kids. We didn't rush to judgment about a lot of things. Now, if it was a massive situation, something that was extremely disruptive, yeah, we had law enforcement to come and help us and assist us. But, you know, not every case. We don't. My resource officers, let me tell you, I had some great resource officers. They became part of the school, so much so that our kids would go up and hug them, not realizing they wearing weapons that can kill them. And the kids just, and when you make them a part of the school, and I had great resource officers, they helped out with kids with prom dresses and senior trips and yearbooks, and they coached. And I think that's where we have to work together. We have to see them as part of our school and not as somebody that's coming to be punitive, to be there just as punishment, but as protectors. So, you know, we wanted our resource, and that's one thing I'm gonna really hop on if I have the opportunity to be the school board representative for District 3, is that our resource officers become part of the school, and become a member or faculty member.
Do you think teachers should carry guns into the school?
No, definitely no. I wouldn't trust myself with a gun in school. I mean, no. And when we get to that point where teachers have to carry guns, we might as well homeschool everybody, because it doesn't take but one mistake.
Do you have
bad to happen.
state you all where teachers are allowed to carry guns?
They trying to, yeah, in some places, some states, they have passed a referendum so teachers could carry guns, you know, and all of that. But hopefully it don't come to that here.
Yes.
No.
And that's a danger in itself, because if you're not proficient with a gun and have not been trained with it, you could, even the most trained law enforcement make mistakes. But
Police do it all the time,
yeah.
supposedly. But hey, Christine Fars on the Facebook stream has an interesting comment. However, she says, I am both a veteran and a military spouse, and this is not the way to do this. There are always programs to help active duty military to transition into teaching. It's called Troops to Teacher program. If they want to address the teacher shortage, the state could actually fully and properly fund education. Great point there. They could back teachers' unions. They could eliminate student loans for any state school. For teachers working in public schools, they should offer free tuition to state schools for those willing to teach 4 years in the public education. They could offer free tuition for those wanting to obtain their master's. They could offer bonuses for those in Title I schools. The state shouldn't do away with requirements, but end the obstacles of gaining requirements. They could appreciate a teacher's work, not depreciating with unqualified staffing. Great point. Great point.
Great point. Great point. Yes. Yes.
David, you also oversaw the initiative to implement mental health training for students, which is very, very important, especially during these times. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, that was so important because some of the things that our students are exposed to, and having someone who is trained to do that and being able to keep it confidential, and to build up that confidence, and that a kid would be able to open up and tell you that. We had training for our teachers, we had training for our students. We had a referral mechanism with students, because a lot of times students know what other students are going through, but they don't know how to report it and how to get it resolved. They have friends that I've had kids that were homeless, and you wouldn't have known it if someone hadn't come and tell you, hey, so-and-so is living in a car. I mean, they're living with somebody different every night, and that type of thing. So mental health training, we oversaw it. Teachers were trained to see the warning signs, and we had a referral system where we could do it with discretion, where people wouldn't know that, and kids wasn't afraid to come and tell us that, hey, so-and-so is having problems, or I'm having problems. And so it was school-wide, it was county-wide. Every administrator supposedly have trained their faculty and staff, and students was required as well. And all of these initiatives came out of, Margaret Douglas, because we know that the shooter had some mental issues in South Florida that was not addressed properly. And the signs were there, a lot of the signs were there. And we have to be able to see those signs and recognize them and be proactive. And that's one thing I try to do, is to be proactive with students, break down barriers for their success, and not be so reactive. Because like I said, Carol, as administrators, sometimes when things come across our desk, we just implement policy. We may not like it, may not agree with it.
That's right.
We want to stick our neck out for this kid. But sometimes it just don't work out. So I want to work on the other end, that our kids never get to that point of being in that situation. But mental health is very important. I'm so glad we have mental health counselors in the schools. It's much needed. And also even the social workers, man. I mean, some of these kids need clothing, they need transportation, they need food, and they would love to be involved in activities at school, but sometimes their home life takes them away from that. Because when kids are active in things in school, they do better. School becomes meaningful, and it becomes important to them. So anything we can do to help these kids, I'm for it.
And I'm so glad you talked about the social component of it, because that's very, very important. Not just to focus in on academics, but also the social development and some of the issues that go along at home and in other environments. So you have to be aware of both, not just the academics, which I think a lot of times that's all they do is talk about the academics and what the students are doing. to talk more about that, let's go to college and career readiness. That's your priority. What do you plan to do for students or for this, I would say for individuals in District 3 as far as college and career readiness?
Yeah, and one of the things I've done also, I've talked to several Chamber of Commerce in town, because we have to know what jobs are going to be coming down the pike for our students to be ready. And this doesn't start in high school. I would love to see an infrastructure where we are getting our students ready through middle school, elementary, middle school, get them to start thinking about what they would like to do. And I'd love to see more academies. One of the academies I'm going to try to really push is cybersecurity. It's big right now. And it's going to be some profession, a job that every company is going to need someone who is a cybersecurity expert to protect their product. Just like they have an IT person, they're going to need a cybersecurity person. Some of the things I implemented at Pensacola High School when I was principal, I brought in a culinary arts, and I did not know kids love to cook as much as they do. And they were knocking the doors down trying to get in our culinary arts class. Another thing I wanted to do, we couldn't get to it, is music production. Kids love music. I would love for them to know how to produce music, not just to be a rapper or a singer, but behind the scenes, what does it take to produce music? How can I become a producer and produce music? And I wanted to have sort of that type of academies. We have to meet kids where they're at, things that they're interested in, and present them. One of the things that we've tried to do, and I don't know if all the other high schools have done it, we try to enroll kids into academies a lot of times. Sometimes they've been placed in academies. We try to get them in academies because, like I say, the school becomes more meaningful when they're involved in something. We had cosmetology at one time, and we had several girls that sit for the state license. We have early childhood development where a lot of girls, young ladies, when they graduate, they can open up their own early childhood, their child care services. But it's all dollars. I remember I was listening to y'all a couple of weeks ago about that. And so dollars and success rate of the academies help the money to continue to come in. So these students have to sit for these state exams and they have to pass them for us to hold on to those academies. Now, as a principal, we have the discretion sometimes to say, hey, 5 slots, and I did it. I want you to hold 5 slots for kids and I think would benefit from being in this academy and giving them opportunity. And we'd sit down with those kids and say, hey, did you get a shot to be in the academy? I wish more teachers, more schools would do that. Because sometimes kids don't know what they want to do, but we can introduce them to some things and let them let them get in the academy and see if they like it. But they got to know they've got to pass the state exam. They've got to keep their grades up. There's strings attached to that federal dollars, as y'all know, that you have to adhere to certain things to keep that money coming in. And then the students have to pass those state exams, those state certs, for those programs that stay viable in the community, in the school system.
But do you really think the community, when I say community, the African American community or the community of color, really know about the academies the way they should? Is there some way that you could, at the beginning of the school year or whenever, because there are different enrollment dates, I really don't think the community really have a grasp on how to enroll, when to enroll, what is offered, because there's nothing out there that says other academies in District 3, you have these academies, and the District 7, these other academies, and how you enroll. Would that be something you would do? Because I really think it needs to be done.
Yeah, I think we can do a better job of publicizing. Kids who go to West Florida High School, they know the academies. They go in there because they signed up for some of those academies. I think we probably could do a better job, I know we can, do a better job of letting the public know we have these many academies, because we've increased them since I was, over the past few years. I forgot what the percentage is, but they have increased. We've increased the number of academies. But like you said, I think we can do just a better job. We have the career fair, we have academy fairs, we have the Pathway to Success nights. But we've got to get that word out there to those kids, especially when they come in as 9th graders. And some middle schools have academies as well. So, Yes, I think that's something that I would love to do to try to inform the African American community
Right.
of more of what's happening in the academies, because everybody, not like you said, everybody's not going to go to college. Everybody's not going to go in the military. Some people will leave high school and go right into the workforce, and we can prepare them for that. And that's one of my goals, that we have our students college and career ready when they leave us.
What's the percentage of African American compared to whites as far as enrolled in the academies? Do you know that?
I don't know that. I'd be afraid to say that.
Yeah.
I can find it out for you. I don't think it's equal. I can say that. I don't think it's equal.
That's why we have to do something to make sure it's equal, and that our community have access to these academies. And so that would be something that we would like to know. What percentage of African American students are actually enrolled in academies? Because there are guidelines for them.
Yes.
And then I know our time is gone, but you have one more priority, which is closing the achievement gap. And can you talk about that?
Yes, and like I mentioned before, the closing the achievement gap was, I increased the graduation rate for all students, African American students. How we did that is by building relationship with the students. I hired a graduation coach. I hired a literacy coach. One of the things I want to do in District 3 is bring in more literacy programs. That's an infrastructure that goes from elementary to middle school to high school. When we disaggregate the data of the schools, I was looking at all of the schools in District 3. I was looking at their school grade. We had a couple of them that dropped, a few of them that maintained their school grade. But if you go back and look at the literacy program in each one of those schools, you can close the achievement gap. But what you have to do is that you have to individualize those students. You have to get those students, and I had a great graduation coach that they went and pulled these kids out during the school day. They didn't have to stay after school. They didn't have to come before school. I made it available for them to pull them out of certain classes during the day. Might have been 30 minutes. Hey, you got to do this. I'm gonna give you some extra work on this because you didn't do well on this part of the FSA, the state test. Also, I'm gonna tell you another thing that we did a lot of time is that kids are just not aware that the state has labeled them at risk. They didn't realize that when they came to school that they were labeled at risk. So what I had was, like, we called it an academic awareness assembly. And all of the students that was considered at risk, we'd bring them into the auditorium and we'd sit down and talk to them. We'd give them their individual scores. And we say, hey, look, the state has labeled you at risk, which means that there's a 50-50 chance that you're going to be successful. And what we want to do is motivate them to feel the point of, I'm not an at-risk student. I can achieve, I can do this.
Right.
And so, but we broke down barriers. We moved all of the barriers. We tried to find out what was hindering them from being successful. Was it their literacy, their reading level? If they had a problem reading, we helped them with reading. If they had, after school stuff they had to do, we tried to help them with that. We tried to eliminate any barrier possible so that they can be successful. And we was able to do that. That's why we raised the graduation rate. I got on mentors. We increased our mentor by 50%. We matched students up with mentors in the city, and they came on campus and they'd mentor them. And we exposed them to college. And I had the opportunity to represent the Escambia County School System. We went to Charleston, South Carolina, and saw a program that we was trying to get. It's called Promise Neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And one of the things they did in Charleston is that in elementary school, they had all of the college pennants hanging in the elementary schools. So they had the students in elementary school already thinking about possibly going to college.
Yes.
They would take the elementary students on college visits. They didn't wait till they were high schools to take them to college visits. They started, talking about college, what you want to do, and this. If you want to be this, we're going to help you get. You might want to be a fireman. We're going to tell you this is everything you have to do. So that's one thing I want to do. I want to break down those barriers. Help these students to have a hope and move forward. Like I say, I love District 3. I'm gonna do everything I can to help, regardless of the outcome of this election. I'm an educator, and I'm going to continue to do what I can to help district because the public school system has been great to me. A.A. Dixon, Brownsville Middle School, Pensacola High School.
Mhm.
I even went to PJC. I got my advanced degrees from UWF, and hopefully within the next fall, get through this election, I can finish my doctorate. Did chapters 1, 2, and 3. I got to finish chapters 4 and 5, and hopefully by the spring I'll be Dr. David Williams.
Oh, we
And who
would
knows
love
what
to
else.
say that. We'd love to say Dr. Williams. Now, our time, because we do have someone else coming. I want to offer Derek or Bill or Jill a chance to ask the question.
Well, I wanted to read a question. Thank you so much, Ms. Carroll. Dr. Clark Samuel X says, do you think teachers who teach in tested areas such as Algebra 1 should be given extra incentives such as extra pay? He also says, and also bonus incentives for the number of students that score proficient and advanced, similar to football players given bonuses for gaining 1,000 yards.
I'm kind of leery on the merit pay situation because you're talking to a person that I taught the lowest of low, and I wanted that. I taught pre-algebra and algebra 1, and I felt like I did just as good a job as someone that was teaching trigonometry. I was an educator. My merit was in the success of my students. I think sometimes when we do merit, we pit teachers against teachers. We are in this profession. A lot of us know we're not going to get rich doing this. You're not going to get rich. But one of the things I want to do when I become the school board representative, I want to acknowledge teachers. I want to support teachers, and I want to praise teachers. We don't have much else to give them. If I can give them pay, I will. But we've got to support them. We've got to acknowledge the work they're doing, and we've got to praise them for what they're doing. And for a lot of teachers, that's enough. But I just don't want to get to the point of competitive teaching.
Well, Maurice Moody on our Facebook stream says he wondered what your thoughts are as far as DeSantis to stop woke act. It's troubling because one would have difficulty to teach in the Brown decision or the Dahl study by Dr. Kenneth and Mamie Clark. Yeah,
well, we're to educate students. I'm not for one talking about gender at the early age. I want to leave that up to the parents. We don't need to teach them. Just like, we get into the critical race theory. It's a theory. It's not a curriculum. And everything's being used. They're using education for political gain. And stop using things for political gain and do what's right for our students. We're to educate students. I'm not there to teach them their gender or what they think they might be or become. Even have discussions about it. Leave that to the parents. I'm going to teach you how to read. I'm going to teach you how to count and add, and hope to be a good person. Those are the social society issues that are now coming onto our campus that we have to deal with.
Yeah.
When we need to be educating and preparing them for their future. And the political side of it just bothers me that it's trying to be so ingrained in our education system that it's taken away from our purpose, what we're supposed to be doing. The woke act, the critical race theory, and the gender identity thing. I had to deal with that as administrator. I've had some students that wanted to, because when we graduated, the girls wore white and the men wore maroon. That was our school color. We've had girls that wanted to wear maroon and guys that wanted to wear white. I mean, we allowed them to do it because I didn't want to make a big deal of it. I mean, but the bathroom situation, we had to have bathrooms that were unisex. I didn't designate a bathroom that was because I wasn't going to allow. I just wasn't going to allow a female to go into a male and a male going to female. I couldn't do that. So we made a bathroom where anybody could use it.
Oh, okay. That was smart.
Yeah.
Real smart.
But those society issues that affect in education, I mean, they're coming on. They affect us every day in education.
We could talk a lot longer because there's still some things I want to discuss, but short. But I want to give you about a minute to talk about why Tuesday is the election. And so why should they vote for you? This is your last chance on community conversation.
Well, I want to say this. I appreciate you all guys for giving me this opportunity. I'm an educator. I was a successful teacher. I was teacher of the year. I was a successful athletic coach. I was coach of the year 4 times. I was a successful administrator. I was principal of the year for the entire Scanty County School District in 2016. And I just feel like I would make a very successful school board member because of my background, because of my experience, because I've made a difference, because of my passion, because of my love, because of my affinity with District 3. I just want to have that opportunity. But like I said, regardless, I'm going to still be working to help District 3 in our school system and many of your causes. I mean, I've listened to you all on the radio and on Wednesday nights, and we need to, things don't ever change if you don't talk about them. And people got to be willing to come and talk about them and come up with solutions. It's easy to point out the bad things that are happening. My thing is going to be, we're going to praise those great things we're doing and tell us how great we can be in District 3.
Well, would you do this for us if you are successful? Would you continue to come on shows like this, shows Our Voices, the Community Conversations, WBQP TV, and kind of talk to the community in regards to what's going on and keep the community informed? Because like I always say, you know, people say that as they are campaigning, and if they win, then they disappear and we don't. And so,
no, I'll be back. You know where to find me, so it won't be hard.
Okay, and don't say no to us now when we ask you to come. Because
no, I won't. Not you, Karen. No.
Just take back up and play.
I might say no to Jerry, but I won't say no to you, Karen.
Well, okay, I will hold you to that. All right then. All right, you have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Okay, then.
Okay, Derek, that was a wonderful interview. As far as a lot of information, he seemed like a genuine individual. So our next guest is going to be Rebecca Jones, and so Derek is she's due to come on at 8 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock.
She's all right. She's on.
She's on. There she is. Hello, how are you doing?
I'm mute.
Yep, sorry. Now I can't unmute myself. Sorry for the discussion you guys heard earlier about juice boxes. Tomorrow's my daughter's first day. Yeah. Tomorrow's my daughter's first day at pre-K, and so we're trying to make sure that we have everything, and got to have the juice boxes. So
now you're not the kind of person, you said tomorrow is the first day of pre-K, that you're going to be standing. You know, I'm a retired educator. Your parents standing outside looking in the window. Oh, that's going to be you tomorrow. Huh?
Yeah. Every time I go through one of these back to school things, I think, you know what? Oh, I'll be so excited just to send them off. And I'm like, no, I'm the mom who's like, why are you running away? Why are you so excited to go? It's like, come back and give me a hug. It's like, what are you doing? But, we went and met the teacher, and Evie wanted to stay and play the whole day anyways, and we had to kind of drag her out of there. So I just, pre-K is I'm going to be a mess for pre-K, but when kindergarten hits and my baby girl goes to kindergarten, I am going to be a wreck. Just an absolute wreck. I was when my son started, and I know it's going to happen with my daughter.
Well, you're not the only one. So join the club. So what we're going to do is just ask you some questions and ask them, I hope you're comfortable with it, and I'm sure you are. And this is to let people know who Rebecca Jones is and what your platform is and what you plan to do. So I'm going to ask the first question. I'm going to hand it over to Derek and let him ask a couple of questions. Our host, which is Bill Snow. Hold your hand up, Bill Snow. He's one of our hosts. Vernon Watson is a host. He has a television station. You might want to check him out. We have Jill, who's our new co-host in the center there. And then you have myself and my husband, who is co-hosting Community Conversations. So we're so glad and honored to have you here. So
thank you, guys.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, you had an interesting background. I've read about you in past, and I'm going to let you talk about it but very interesting.
Yeah, it depends on how far back we want to go. Because it's never not been interesting, unfortunately. I mean, I guess the first like 8 or 9 years was pretty boring. You know, I was born to teenage parents in South Pennsylvania, and I moved to Southern Mississippi, just north of Gulfport, when I was 9. Actually, it was 3 days before my 9th birthday, and I remember it was so hot. That same year, Hurricane George hit, and that was my first hurricane. And we had gone to the island, Ship Island, for the first time in my life. It was the first time I saw the ocean. It was the second time I tasted salt water. The first time was when I was plopped on one of the whales in the Ohio SeaWorld, which now, knowing what I know, is incredibly dangerous thing to do. And I can't believe someone did that. But I was the enthusiastic kid always in the front row when they said, who wants to do it? I was like, me. So I kind of fell in love with the ocean when we went out there to the island for the first time. And then George hit in October, and we went back that spring. And I remember seeing what it did, how one storm could just change the entire an island. It just erased part of it. And ever since then, I think I've been very fascinated with extreme weather, with hurricanes, with climate. That's what I went to college for. I was a scholarship kid. I went to Syracuse University for my undergraduate degree. I studied hurricanes and landforms and climate change. I actually wrote my master's thesis on those islands at LSU. And so I started studying something called paleotempestology, which is just a churched up way of studying how hurricanes change over time. And I took that to do my PhD at Florida State. I didn't finish, still have to do my dissertation if I ever want to revisit and go back and do it. But I basically worked with Native American tribes across the whole northern Gulf Coast of Mexico to try to recreate hurricane history before Europeans were here, so that we can better understand how hurricanes have behaved, not just how frequent and intense, but the geographical distribution of them in different warmer and colder periods of time. And so yeah, that's what I want to study. I ended up at the Florida Department of Health the year I had my daughter, which was 2018, mostly because they needed somebody who had a very strong environmental science background to work in environmental health. And within 9 months, I was promoted to manager of all of our data and geospatial research division. And then COVID hit. And I think the story from that point on has been told in so many different places, so many different times and ways that it's kind of been, drugged to death. But essentially in January, when we were first notified, because I worked for emergency response, that was my job within the Department of Health, that COVID was a pandemic. I really tried to emphasize within the Department of Health that we needed some kind of public communications portal to let people know what we were doing. For the first 6 weeks, it was, even if we don't have any cases here, which we knew we did, we need to let people know, okay, this is who we're testing, this is where we're testing, this is where you can go get tested, like all of this very critical, important information, because the worst thing you want to do in a crisis is leave people in the dark. There was this idea that if we talked about it, we would instill panic. But I mean, all you had to do was go to Publix down the toilet paper aisle and see that things had gone horribly awry by not sharing any information. I don't know. I'm still trying to trace the origin of the whole you need to hoard toilet paper thing. But that one may forever remain a mystery. But I did that until March 12th. And then I remember it was Friday the 13th. And DeSantis decided that, okay, now we're going to treat this seriously. And they called me up and said, we need all that stuff you were talking about doing for the past month and a half today. And I did it. I had created basically an empty shell of what I wanted to do so many times to be like, look, this is how it will work. All we have to do is plug in the real data. Like, this is where people can go to find out information about cases. Like, isn't this wonderful? And it works so easily. And so I actually had built it quite a few times, and I was ready to go that afternoon, and I ran it by myself. I ran Florida's COVID and surveillance systems by myself all day, every day, for about 2 months. until the state up and decided it was time to reopen. And they wanted the data to support that plan without ever asking us if it did. I think somewhat operating on the assumption at first that it would. And when I had the pleasure of informing them that it did not, that was unacceptable. And we started making changes and eventually ended up in a place where what they wanted me to post was completely opposite of what the reality was. And I said no. And I got fired. 2 days later, the governor, who I've never been alone in a room with, was attacking me in front of the vice president of the United States on live TV. And yeah, it was a bit crazy. And I hid for 5 days from the media, thinking for sure tomorrow they'll move on. This is the media we're talking about. You know, that something happens and they move to the next shiny object, and it didn't happen. They stayed fixated on it. And I think my silence might have fueled that. But after 5 days, I received an article that they were publishing in the United Kingdom in a tabloid, attacking me. And I said, well, you know what? The only reason I hadn't come forward was because I wanted to protect my family and my family's privacy. And if this is what they're going to do, I no longer have that reason. And I owe the public the truth. So that's what I did. And I kept doing it every day since that happened, which now has been over 2 years. It's been a while.
What gave you the strength to say no? You know, a lot of people would not say no and would have went along with it. But where did you get that? Where did that come from for you to stand on your convictions and say, no, I'm not going to do this?
So I get asked that question a lot. And I feel like because we've Hollywoodized a lot of things, people imagine that I took like a long walk, you know, down the beach and I stared out at the ocean. I thought about what my life would look like if I stood up to them. And no, I just said no. I actually laughed in her face. Because as a climate scientist, the idea that someone would ask you to manipulate data for a political purpose is such a horrendous, career-ending thing to do that no one would ever do it. So when they said, you know, one of the biggest barriers was positivity rates, which were supposed to be below 10%. And a couple of counties were like 18, 20. And she said, well, just change it to 10. I thought she was joking. So I laughed. And it was not a joke. So there was not some big profound moment. Those came later. But in that moment, it was, no, of course I'm not doing that. Like, that's insane. Why would you even ask me to do that? I'm never going to do that. And if you want someone to do that, you need to fire me. And they did.
Wow.
So
I want to say this is Rebecca Jones. She's running for Florida's first congressional district. And I want to ask this last question, Derek. I'm gonna let you come in. But you know, I thought this was kind of enlightening too. When you said throughout your childhood there were only 3 rules in your household. Do you remember that?
yes.
Now, yeah, talk about that. You said there was only 3 rules throughout your childhood in your house. Just tell us those 3 rules.
Oh God. Well, I'm not sure which 3 I was talking about in this specific interview, but
can I read?
sure.
I saw you says putting everything you have and put everything you
Education.
have in your education.
Yeah, that was the
Your
biggest
parents
rule.
were telling you that. It's the only thing no one can ever take away from you, and it will give you the freedom to choose what you spend the rest of your life doing. That's what your parents are feeling to you.
I know what the other 2 are, then I think. The second one is spend your time with family or people that you love and that make you happy and that build you up, because that's 1/3 of your life. 1/3 of your life is work. So make sure that whether that is, you know, science, which I personally never thought I would go into. I went to school to be a journalist at first, and actually a war journalist. And then I had my son unexpectedly my junior year and realized that was probably not the best situation to be bringing a newborn into. So instead of observing the world's problems, I decided to be a part of their solutions. And the second one is to spend time with people you love. Don't allow people into your life that bring you down, that hurt you, that you're uncomfortable around. I learned that because I had family who were not good people. I actually ended up turning in my own grandfather to ICE for sex trafficking in the Philippines. He was arrested, he went to prison there, and he died. And I learned that if people are not good for you, just keep them out of your life. That's a third of your waking time, like your life is that. And the third one, and is my favorite one, is to buy a hell of a bed, because you're going to spend a third of your life laying flat on that thing. A third of your life is spent on a bed sleeping. And if it's not good, nothing else is ever going to be good. And so, yeah.
Good bad. That's one thing. Bill?
Yeah, Ms. Jones, what's troubling about that answer was that if you only had 3 rules in your family, your question, you answered it as if you answer as if you give different answers.
Yeah,
depending on who
well, those
asked
are, like I said, I only
that
had to hear the
troubles
first
me.
one, but I have 2 rules for my son. So which is why I wanted to make sure that that's not what I was talking about. And my son I could call him in here right now and he could tell you. So I was worried about 3. I was like, are these the 3 rules for my son or for myself?
Okay.
And I've always told my son that there are only 2 things that matter in this world. And that's honesty and kindness. And you cannot have one without the other. And those 2 things I have been telling him since he was an infant. And that's why I was like, I was confused about 3. I was like, are these the ones for my
You
house
said-
now or when I was growing up? Because
Yeah.
those are
Yes,
2
you
different
both
things.
Pose the question, Ms. Jones,
Yeah,
growing up in your home,
yeah.
you said that there were only 3 rules. She didn't say it.
Well, the bed one wasn't even technically our rule. I developed that one later in life. We could not afford nice fancy beds when I was growing up. We had Sam's Club beds. And so I added that one in later because I realized that with my back problems, I was like, I need a good bed. I need a good bed. That's the
Ms.
third
Jones,
piece
you're
that we're
talking about a
missing.
bed, and I'm talking about the question posed to you. The question posed was, you said, growing up in your home.
Yes.
And the way you answered the question was, is if you answer that question depending on who's asking the question is what troubled me. And
Yeah. That's why I asked her to read it, because as soon as she said education, I was like, I know which one you're
Ms.
talking
Jones,
about.
if there's only 3 rules that you grew up with in your home, why would the question have to be? Some things are what they are, and some things sound misleading. I just have a problem with the way you answer that. I'm sorry. Just forgive me.
So when I had my son, or when I got pregnant, I was 19 years old. I was still a child. And growing up in my home means growing up with my son, because I was not a grown up when I had him. And those 2 rules that I have taught him my entire life have been since I was a child, because I was a child when I had him. 19 is an adult, but it's not a grown up. And so I wanted to know whether or not I was talking about my mom's rules, which are that education and your family are the most 2 important things, or mine, which are to tell my son to treat people with honesty and kindness. The third one's the bed. And I'm sorry, but I will defend that to no end because it's important. But those were always the 2 rules. And my mom taught us those because she was 13 years old when she was raped. She was not given a choice about having my sister, and she was 14 years old when she had her.
Wow.
And she had 3 more of us by the time she was 21. She was 17 with me, 19 for my little sister, and 21 for my younger brother. And my parents were not equipped to deal with this world. They were not. She was a child. My mother was a child. And I was still very much, not as nearly as much, but still very much a child when I had her. And her only 2 rules were, you get that education, because frankly, she never had the chance. She got a GED. And as brilliant as she is, and she's still the most brilliant person that I know, and the only person I trust with most things, she never got that chance. So she said, you get an education. And because her father was the one I turned into ICE, and he was a very toxic person who destroyed their family, she said, you only spend time with the family that you love. Because family isn't just your blood relatives. It is the people who build you up around you all the time.
And evidently, evidently you got something instilled in you, because you don't mind taking a stance, even though there's consequences for it. And that makes a lot of people stop doing, if they want to do it, they stop because they don't want the consequences. But you are accepting the consequences, and that's something to me. Vernon and then Derek.
Yeah, yes. My question is, I want to find out why you're running for office. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so after everything happened not last year, I guess I still need to wake myself up that it's been 2 years. I spent the next 6 months just being a public advocate for science. I would do 4 or 5 news shows a day and just give people the data that wasn't obstructed or filtered or selective about COVID in Florida, eventually in schools nationwide, because neither the federal government nor anyone other than myself and Google seemed to think that it was important to know how many of our students and teachers were getting sick and dying. And I was looking around to try to find someone who would step up and do it. I had time, I had resources, and I had the knowledge, so I did it. And I was happy with that. I actually was reticent to even talk about politics because I wanted, more important than anything, was for people to trust the data that they were seeing. And I felt like if I was overly political, even though that's how I felt, they wouldn't have anywhere to go. The state destroyed the reputation of all the data systems I built for them when they went through all this. And I wasn't going to push everybody away by being hyperpartisan. That changed at about 8:23 a.m. on December 7th of 2020, when a dozen cops showed up to my house and told me to come downstairs and said they had a warrant. I opened the little window right next to my door and there was a gun pointed at my head, and they told me to open it. So I did. Walked outside, had my arms up, was ready to go to jail. My husband and I had talked about that, before I decided to come forward, and said, look, they'll find something. This is a bad guy. DeSantis is a bad guy. If he would attack you in front of the vice president, having never met you, having never shaken your hand, having never spoke to you one-on-one alone, always in like groups or like the emergency operations center, he's capable of much worse. So I was like, okay, let's go to jail. And then they came into my house, and as soon as I said that my kids were upstairs, one of their officers pulled out his gun. And they stayed there for 3 hours while they waited on their warrant to arrive. I asked 6 times for it. 6 different times in the video. I say, I want to see your warrant. And they kept saying, it's on the way. And it was at some point during that 3 hours that I decided that whatever it took, I was going to make sure they were held accountable for what happened to my son. Because my daughter was 2.5 the first time she had an AR-15 pointed at her. But my son was 11. And that is an age at which whatever happens to you, it sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And even before I had to live through the consequences of the trauma that was for him, I knew what it would look like. My son's autistic. He has struggled every single grade. We had like Northwest Florida's disability rights on speed dial because the school didn't feel like his behavior issues were real behavior issues, as one of the counselors told me. And I knew what it was going to look like to be traumatized. I knew the statistics about gun violence and exposure to gun violence for young men. And that night, because our bedrooms were upstairs and his was across from mine and my husband's, I couldn't sleep, so I went up to go take a bath, and my 11-year-old son was sleeping in a ball on the hallway outside my bedroom door because he was afraid that the next time he woke up, the police would come back and kill him. So I promised him that no matter what I had to do, no matter how hard I had to fight, there would be an answer for that. And I didn't know, I think at that moment, what that would look like. I left the state for 6 months. It wasn't safe for them anymore. And as soon as I got whistleblower designation from the state, which I did not anticipate getting, I knew exactly what that meant for me. And the first thing I did was find a place, sign a lease, and move back.
We're getting Facebook comments all over the place, both pro and against. Francine Madison says, why did you pay over $2,000 to 2 Republicans, and one of those Republicans responsible for the Luton Wedgwood area very disgusting to me and the people in Wedgewood, Rolling Hills community. Christina Forrest, however, says, I'm proud to support Rebecca Jones for Congress. I've heard so many rumors and tabloid information. I have not seen anyone stand up to DeSantis the way Rebecca did. She also stated that there have been well, that's the same one. Why does it duplicated? But yeah, there plenty of anti and support for Ms. Jones.
I attacked quite a few vicious trolls and misinformation, which is a whole other discussion, a movie, a book, or a series that, you know, we could go through. And like Ed Brown right here is now trolling us. He's lying, but he doesn't care because he's anonymous, and he can hide behind the cowardice of anonymity and say whatever he wants. And there's no one who's going to, you know, bring a sledgehammer to his front door. There's no one that's going to point guns at his kids for the lies that he's telling right now. And yet that happened to me for being too forward and too truthful.
Right.
And that really I have all sorts of feelings about media accountability, but that's the cowardice that we have to face. And, you know, that's the world that we live in. But yeah, it was certainly a wake up call for me. But as far as going toe to toe with DeSantis goes, I have been asked so many times, what do you think it is about you specifically that drives him insane? Because anytime anybody asks him about me, he loses it. And like, he will storm off like he did after he was asked about the raid. That video recently made the rounds again. People spliced it up with the raid at Mar-a-Lago, his reaction to the raid on my home, in which he's defending it, and he eventually gets up and he storms off. That was about me. That was about my family. He was defending people pointing guns at my 2.5-year-old. And I've kind of waved between I don't know what it is and I think I know exactly what it is. I don't know him personally, so I can't say what drives a sociopath. But at the same time, I was mid-management at the Florida Department of Health. I grew up poor and homeless in South freaking Mississippi, in the 15th poorest county in the United States. I was a scholarship kid who screwed up so many times and got in trouble for everything. The sheriff of my hometown, affectionately, I will say, nicknamed me Trouble when I was 10. You know, I'm not someone, period. And I'm certainly not someone who should be able to, in such an easy way, wound someone like him. You know, the governor of the 3rd largest state of Florida, someone who's supposed to have an armor shield around himself. If I could make him bleed, then there's no one on this planet that couldn't. And I think that I became a symbol for how ordinary people who aren't particularly special can stand up and say no and have power in that. It wasn't me, it was the threat of what I represented. And he became obsessed and fixated with crushing it. And unfortunately, I've had a family along with me to have to deal with that. If it was just me, it'd be one thing. Probably the worst part of all of this is having my family go through everything beside me. I mean, I tried very hard to shield them and I failed.
Well, we want to get Derek in with the question. We on a time limit, so let's get Derek in, and then the rest of them might have questions about Derek.
I want to shift. Thank you. First, let me say thank you for coming on. We greatly appreciate it. Love the opportunity to be able to hear from you. I want to shift the conversation a little bit to your platform and what you see as important for Northwest Florida residents. Can you tell us in your words what you think would be the top 3 priorities upon which you would focus on if you were elected into the U.S. Congress?
Yes, and I want to actually, because I'm seeing this pop up, I do want to address what Francine said. I have a lot of respect for Francine and what she's doing, and support her, and I've told her that. She's referring to how I hired the listener group as my campaign consultants. I have a tripartisan campaign team. There's a Republican, there's an NPA, and there's a Democrat. And the group that they work for is the listener group. I realized very quickly that if I did not have any NPA or Republican support, if I couldn't pull away all the Matt Gaetz people who voted for him 2 years ago, and now all of a sudden we're like, well, I had no idea that he was a sex trafficker, we won't win. Only 24% of this district are registered Democrats. that number is not a majority. We need to convince everyone who's out there who's watching what Matt Gaetz has done or not done for us and say there's an acceptable path that you can go away from that. And frankly, there is no one who hates Matt Gaetz more than Scott Miller. And he is one of the people who works with the listener group. He's the one who did PR for the Wedgwood facility before I came here, and has a lot of regrets about that. I drilled him pretty hard about that and how it was mishandled. And I don't let anybody skirt blame for something that they're partly responsible for ever. And so I'm not trying to dodge what Francine is saying. And I don't want her to feel like I'm ignoring it because I'm perfectly aware. But I also know I can't do anything for this district if we can't pull away the Republicans who hate Matt Gaetz. We can't. I mean, it makes me uncomfortable at some points because I have to straddle this line between being kind of the abrasive me that I always am, in private 24/7 and in a lot of avenues, and the person who can win this race, because I can't change anything if I don't win.
Okay,
And
go back to what Derek asked in regards to priorities.
yes, so I came into this and I've shifted my priorities a little bit, but my first big three were infrastructure, environment, and education. Things have gotten so insane in the past year that I think a reassessment of that is partly necessary. Environment and infrastructure are certainly intertangled issues, but they affect different communities differently. So flooding in Gulf Breeze proper, where most people there can afford a higher flood insurance rate or to pay to raise their homes or to pay for flood protection, is not the same infrastructure that you have in Western Pensacola or downtown Pensacola, where you have a combined sewage overflow system that every single time it rains backs up and feces is left all over the street. Those are not the same problems. They do not have the same proportional impact, and they need to be dealt with differently. That's more of an environmental justice issue that I've tried to make very, very central, because as an environmental scientist, that's the thing that I dedicated my career to. It's what I dedicated my education to. It's what I was going to spend the rest of my life doing. And those are the things that need to be dealt with first. So if anybody remembers, and this feels like a lifetime ago, last September and October, I actually sent out about 46,000 letters to residents all over the district, telling them exactly what environmental contaminants were on their property. And so I did this analysis myself. I found all of the Superfund sites, all of the EPA toxicity sites, all the cleanup sites. And I sent a list of chemicals that had been detected, everything from tetrachloride to lead to 46,000 people in this district. And I got about 800 calls from people who had no idea. They had no idea the house they bought 30 years ago is now on a Superfund site, because it's not mandated that they tell them. It's not required in any way, shape, or form that they be informed of what's in the ground or what's in the water or what's in the air. And for me, as an environmental scientist who studies things like toxicity, the Department of Health, that's one of the most abhorrent things. You have a right to know. You have a right to know what your house is built on. And if someone made it an unlivable or an unsafe place to live, that person is the one who's responsible for cleaning it up, not you.
Right.
Asking a homeowner to clean up, a Superfund site because the house that they bought now that's been depreciated and they're only going to pay them a third of what it's actually valued at, or a third of what it would cost them to have a comparable place somewhere else, is not fair. That's wrong.
Okay.
And so that's one of the biggest issues. Education for me, I'm a public education kid. I didn't go to school in a great state. I went, K through 12 in Mississippi, or sorry, not K through 12, 4 through 12 in South Mississippi. And I learned most of what I knew in high school on the internet at the library. But my sister's a public school teacher in Mississippi. And the way that I see the charter school system siphoning off money from the public school districts in this state, the way that they did in Louisiana, it horrifies me.
Okay.
It's stealing money from public schools, and it has to stop, because as was the discussion much earlier tonight, we are hemorrhaging teachers. Florida more so, every state's having this problem, but Florida more so than any other state. California has 2.5 times the population of Florida and has half the teacher shortages. We are the third to last state in teacher pay. There is no excuse for that. And now we're hiring people who have no education experience whatsoever to lead first grade and second grade classes. I mean, I've no disrespect whatsoever to our service members, but having 60 hours of a business class 20 years ago doesn't qualify you to know how to handle third graders. You know, we have people who go to college for 4 years, who take out student loan debt, who commit themselves to being educators and caregivers that have to study to understand this and have experience to do it. And we can't pay them enough to keep them, but we can recruit all these new people to fill those gaps and pretend like that's a sufficient alternative. So the federal government's not doing enough to step up and level the playing field between states, and that needs to be done.
Okay, I'm gonna stop in because we've got a couple of questions that we want to get in before. I know you have a lot to say, but there's a couple of questions that we definitely want to get in. One question: where do you stand on women's right to choose?
I'm pro-choice, and I've always been.
Okay.
I grew up in a state that had no abortion clinics, and back when I was in high school, Mississippi, the source of the Supreme Court lawsuit, of course, that has overturned that right. I used to drive girls over to Mobile if they didn't have anybody to take them, because Mobile was the only state where you only needed one parent's consent. And I could say a lot more about that, but I've been unapologetically pro-choice my whole life.
Good. Jerry.
I was just going to ask you, one of the biggest threat to democracy is voting rights. What do you see as the problem and the solution to making sure that people have that right to vote?
So I'm different in that I've never understood why individual states have the right to preclude people from their constitutional duty to vote for federal representatives. The fact that we still have all of these barriers for convicted felons who have served their time, even after we voted to restore those rights, is abhorrent. There's half of our felony crime systems developed after the end of slavery specifically to be able to charge people to preclude them from ever being able to vote ever again. It was a means of disenfranchising huge swaths of the population. And that has to stop. It has to stop. There's no state in this country that should be able to say, you don't have a right to vote for president, ever. And you thought Florida fixed this, and of course we didn't. But it's not just as simple as deciding who can and can't vote. It's also this erosion of trust in our public voting systems. Florida this year has election police for the first time, and it's going to be terrifying to see how that works out. The systems between states are entirely inconsistent. The data sharing is very limited. It's almost as if we wanted to make it as convoluted and as complicated as possible, when the fact is that the United States Constitution says that all you need to be able to do to vote is be a US citizen over the age of 18.
Right.
Anything above that should not be considered constitutional. And the Supreme Court needs to look at it that way. Because the fact is that half the people don't vote because they, honest to God, believe that it doesn't matter. And we can't honestly tell them that they're wrong.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court is what stripped out Section 4 and 5 of the Voting Rights Act. I feel that, whoever is representing the area and whoever is representing the representatives in Congress and in the Senate should be pushing to end the filibuster so we can codify voting rights into law, as well as women reproductive rights and the right to choose should be codified into law.
Yeah, I agree. I still am angry that the John Lewis Voting Rights Act was not passed, because if we can't pass voting rights, then what is anything else that we're doing matter for? If people don't have a voice in their democracy, then nothing else matters. It's just a rule by those who are decided by the government to be worthy of voting. And that's immoral. And it's antithetical to everything that the United States government is supposed to stand for. Forget our sordid history. We're supposed to be a place where all people are equal. And we've created a system even within the democratic process of voting where we're not.
Right.
And yeah, I don't care that, you know, Manchin and Sinema came around for the infrastructure, or sorry, the Inflation Act. The fact that they could not secure voting rights is, to me, a thing that should have both of them packing at the next election.
Derek, you have another question?
Yes, thank you. Since it's been a topic of conversation in the chat, I just want to go to, and talking about environmental racism a little bit. As we know here, particularly around the world, but certainly in Escambia County, it's a genuine fact. Often in our Black neighborhoods, we're dealing with open sewage and recurrent flooding. Much of the panhandle is still on septic tanks, and we have horrific drainage systems. Our area is not doing anything to advocate for any money for the Biden administration, from the Biden administration, grants for upkeep and reconstructions. And we have Black homeowners like Francine mentioned in Olive Heights, Rolling Hills, and Wedgwood area that are still living on Superfund sites and being offered meager amounts to buy their homes. How could you use the power of your office to help if you were elected?
So having someone who actually shows up to the job is a great start. Having someone who can work with the Democratic president and the very clearly Democratic Senate that we're going to have the next term is a bonus. But for me specifically, there's probably no bigger advantage than having someone who is literally an expert in this field up there demanding that these small issues that as they see them are actually dealt with, because they're the things that affect us every single day. It's not by accident that we have sewage in the street. It's something called a combined sewage overflow system. It's the cheapest way of implementing a sewage system, which means that all your rainwater and all your sewage go down the same pipe. It is the cheapest possible way to implement any kind of plumbing system. And it was done strategically in these communities because it was the cheapest way. Whereas other areas, as they were being built, expanded, especially the suburbs, had separated, you know, storm overflow systems. Most of the Northeast has gotten rid of these systems. I actually worked in Syracuse on getting rid of one of these systems. And we don't have anyone doing that here because they don't care. They don't live here. They don't understand what it smells like after there's a heavy rain. I mean, even if Matt Gaetz was around more, he wouldn't be going to the types of neighborhoods to see where these problems are anyways. He lives out on Okaloosa Island. He flies down a couple times a year, brings Trump Jr. and whoever else with him, and that's it. You know, that's unacceptable. If you don't live here, if you're not seeing these problems day in and day out, and you don't understand how these systems work and exactly where the problem is, you can't fix them. You can't fix them if you don't know what the problem is. If you have a beach mansion, you're never going to understand what the problem is in downtown Syracuse, where like Gloria Horning lives and, you know, monitors the feces level on her fence posts every single time it rains, and they want to build up everything around her, which is only going to flood her worse. And these kind of stopgap measures to raise this home or raise that home only exacerbate it for those who are your neighbors who can't afford to do that. And if the government who put you in this place isn't going to pay to help you fix it, that's a betrayal. Like this people didn't do this to themselves. This was done to them by poor policy, poor planning, and oftentimes intentional segregation. And it's the government's job to see that its debts are paid and that people are taken care of, especially when it's no fault of their own.
Yeah, Rebecca, our time is short, but I can't let you leave without asking this question. And then we'll ask one more question to end it. But, you know, you are in the middle of litigation. And I just had to bring that up because it is confusing to people. The last day of voting is Tuesday. So this is your time to clear up what the matter. First, your name is on, then it's off. Now it's back on. People need to know what's going on.
So this is the advice I would give to everyone listening. Just vote. Vote for the person you want to vote for. It's not going to change anything. If, you know, this campaign from this woman from another district is successful in kicking me off the ballot, it doesn't harm her in any single way because she wins by default. But if that's not who you want to vote for, do not vote for her. Like, you get to choose. Your vote does actually mean something. It counts. And we are doing everything that we can to try to make sure that nothing changes that. So when you go into that voting booth, there's 2 names on it for this specific race. If you're a registered Democrat only, you pick the person that you think will have your back, who will go to Washington and will fight with Democrats if necessary to make sure that you're taken care of. Not, oh, we're going to just ignore them because they don't really turn out to vote and because they're mostly Republican. No, do you want to change that or not? Do you want people to see the value in Democratic policies? Do you want people to realize that we're the better leaders, we have the better ideas, and we're going to take care of people first and foremost? Then you need someone who's going to stand up to all of that. And you vote for the person that you think will best do that. And that's all that matters.
Okay. One last question, you all, before she leaves. Does anybody have a final question? Derek, Jill, you kind of quiet. You have a question for
I was
Rebecca?
going to ask the question you just asked, but Rebecca, what I would say is you can see in the chat, and I'm not watching the chat, but we've received text messages and emails and all of this slander and misinformation. What can you leave the everyday person who has to go vote on Tuesday with, so that they can understand what is truth, but more importantly, why is the answer you?
If they weren't worried, they wouldn't try so hard. If they had any platform of themselves, they wouldn't need to lie. They wouldn't need to try to slander people or try to debase people. And 2 years ago, nobody knew who I was. And a year ago, I could have kept it that way. I could have gone back. I could have stayed and kept my family safe. But I chose to come back here because I had a fight that was not over yet. And I was not going to leave the people of Florida hanging. My son's gone to Florida's public schools every single grade since kindergarten. My daughter was born here in Northwest Florida, and she's going to be starting pre-K in Navarre right down the road from me. This is home, and you don't mess with my home. And I'm not somebody who can be intimidated or bribed, and that really scares them. So if that's what you want, if you want somebody who's going to do what's right no matter what, no matter who threatens them, who points a gun at their head, who points guns at their kids, maybe not, a great situation to be in, and I'd like to avoid that in the future, but still happened. That's who I am. And the whole world saw that happen. I don't have to prove that because it already happened. That's why I'm here. I have no other reason. Fight's not over yet.
Okay. All right. Well, we really, really appreciate you, Rebecca. And thank you for coming on Community Conversations. We really, really enjoyed you. Derek, you want to say some last words to her, anyone?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for coming on and offering your insight and sharing with the folks why it is important, why you're running, and taking the time to clear up any of the misconceptions. As I said, and I've had this conversation at Community Conversation on several occasions. I thank you. My ballot was cast for you, and I would, I thank you for the work that you've done, and I thank you for the support that you've given. And we just thank you for your time tonight.
I want to add that I'm sorry about your mom being raped as a teenager.
Oh, well, that's a depressing note to end it on. Can we end it on something happier?
I tried to weigh in when you said it, and
Yeah.
Oh, no, look, that's life. I
Mm.
mean, it seems crazy, but at the same time, it's like, how many kids were like that? How many kids went through that? That's part of the reason why I think I was such a big activist, for reproductive freedom, is because my mom never was given the opportunity to think about what she wanted. That was taken from her. And I was 19 when I got pregnant, in college as a scholarship kid, and still chose to have my son. That was not forced on me. That was my choice.
Mhm.
And that is the most important thing. If I had been forced to have my child, that relationship with my child would be completely different. I chose to have him. I chose to keep him. And no one, especially the government, had a role to play in that.
Okay, great.
We want to
Rebecca?
thank you for coming on. We tried to,
Vernon has-
oh, Vern, go ahead, Vern.
Rebecca, I just want to wish you luck in your endeavors. I like your fighting spirit. Anybody can stand up to Ron DeSantis. You got my support. I think you're the type of person that I believe would stand up for truth. And so hopefully that, and that has been a struggle over the last 4 years with
Sure,
this. So we need somebody, more people like you that are going to just stand up for what you believe in and not afraid to sacrifice. You had a lot to lose. You had an awful lot to lose, and I'm sorry about that. That they're putting guns on your children. I saw the whole thing play out on
Yeah.
television as well as everybody. That was totally unnecessary. And the thing that galls me the most about it is that they had the audacity to show up to your house without a warrant. Okay. And then they had to wait for the warrant to get there, probably to wait to it to create it. So I thought that was unacceptable in my eyes. So, but I wish you much success in what you're doing in your endeavors here. Only thing we need to be sure of that one thing, and this is my opinion, Matt Gaetz needs to go.
Yeah, I think we're all definitely in agreement on that one. And that's a growing trend I've seen so far. I mean, this sounds horrible, but put aside the sex trafficking for a second, if you can, which I don't think you should. He's done nothing for us. He's barely there. He has one of the highest absenteeism rates. All of his bills are basically like walking internet troll bills, like get rid of the EPA or, get rid of the postal service and these basic things that are part of our safeguards as a society. That's all he does, that and fundraise. And he's pretty good at that. To be frank, he is one of the best fundraisers in Congress because he says these incendiary, terrible things about how the only people who want abortions are women who look like toes or thumbs or something ridiculous like that. It's like, do you have a purpose in life? What are you working for, Matt? What are you working towards? If you're not working for the people here, why are you here? You have money. You grew up rich. You can go wherever you want and do whatever you want. Why do you need this?
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't make any sense to me.
We want to thank you for coming on tonight. We try to bring as many candidates as possible on so people can make informed decisions about who they are voting for. And we hope that people have gotten a sense of who you are. And more than that, hopefully they'll support you, those who want to, and those who want to vote for you, they'll have a sense of, hey, that's the person I want. And we hope people choose who they will to vote for. We thank you again for coming on.
Thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
guys. And if anybody ever has any follow-up questions, I'm incredibly easy to get a hold of. Just email us info@RebeccaJonesCampaign.com. Or you can text me our numbers online. So, I mean, I'm going to follow up with Francine, obviously. She's very passionate and she has a lot of very serious questions that deserve to be addressed. But if anybody else has any, please just reach out to me. If I can't be there to answer your questions, I don't deserve to be here.
Would you be willing to come on the show again?
Anytime. Like,
Okay.
if y'all just want to talk about some less depressing stuff at some point, that would be great. Not talk about getting rated or, disease. Some happy things. Let's have happy things. We're going to celebrate a victory of something together one day. I know we are.
All right.
We're going to bring something home and we're going to do nothing but celebrate it.
That's a promise. That's a promise.
It's a promise.
All right. Good night, Rebecca. Nice
Thanks,
talking to you.
guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, we've got about 7 minutes, but I really want to get into, Jared, just a little bit of the voting. The last day is what, Tuesday?
Tuesday, yeah.
And that's
Tuesday is the
important.
only day.
It's
Yeah,
only
Only
day.
day left, yeah.
So
Yeah.
we need
Early
to
voting.
take the 7 minutes to talk about what is expected and what the people in the community should do when they go out and vote. Derek and Jill.
Yeah, I just want to say, as you just mentioned, Tuesday is the only day now that we have left to exercise your greatest voice, which is your ability to vote. And here in Escambia County, I just want to share just a couple of things. Our voter turnout, despite all the efforts, despite Roe v. Wade, despite the overturning of Roe v. Wade, despite all of the attention garnered around our right to vote, our voter turnout of eligible voters thus far in mail-in votes and early voting, which are two heaviest forms of voting, right? We only have had 14% of the total eligible voters in Escambia.
14%.
14%.
Wow.
It is ridiculous. And I will say, I cannot urge you to enough to get out and vote. What that says is that decisions that are going to be made to impact us as a whole are going to be made by very few people. So you need, if you don't like where we're going as a society or the laws that are being passed, you need to make sure you get off your couches, get out of your beds on Tuesday and find your precinct to go and vote. It is of utmost importance. 15% is nothing, 14% is nothing in terms of the primary. Now, we've talked about it, and I know we had conversations, Brother Bill, we talked about thinking that the primary was going to be higher. Primary is usually a low turnout, but with all that has gone on, we fully expected the primary to garner a little bit more in terms of voter turnout. If this is any indication, I'm scared. So I want to make sure that we impress upon everybody to get up on Tuesday and go vote.
Jill?
So I absolutely agree. I'm in Okaloosa County, so our numbers are 13.63%. So we're talking about two large counties. You guys are, of course, larger than us, but if the trend across Northwest Florida right now is under 15%, we're in trouble. And we're going to be the ones, whether it's all of us here today or those of you that are at home that haven't voted yet, we're going to be the ones complaining when the right person doesn't win on Tuesday. We're going to be the ones complaining when the right person doesn't win in November. We're going to be the ones complaining as all of these rules and regulations continue to disenfranchise us. I will say this, I always early vote, and I did not this time, but for a good reason. My daughter and I, since she turned 18, have voted together every single year. This year she is in Orlando. So she is driving up on Tuesday morning, and we are going to stand in line and exercise our right to vote because it's that important. So when we say, take your friends, take your family, make sure you get out, make sure you vote, it's because you can make the difference. And right now, everything is on the line. We say it every year, but this is crucial. And if the easy way, which is just fill it out at home and put it in the mail, didn't work, and the easy way of early voting where you can go to the 5 or the 10 locations and you have less stress didn't work, then what we're asking you, we're begging you, and we're telling you that there's no other option but to get up on Tuesday, rain, shine, I don't care, because we made the choice to wait. So you need to get up, take your umbrella, take your own water, take your snack, bring you a chair if you have to, just in case, because we need you to get through the line so that you can exercise your right to vote, and we can hear your voice and we can make the change that needs to be made. And that does not happen at home. It doesn't happen complaining about it. It doesn't happen talking about it. It happens by casting your ballot on Tuesday, August 23rd, 7 to 7. Make sure you go. It's so, so very important.
2 minutes, Carol.
Okay.
Just want to say and I'm going to read this every week. That if you want to end extreme poverty, if you want a better world, you have to vote. If you want a better environment, if you want a future for your children and grandchildren and children yet unborn, you have to vote. If you want to stop global warming, you have to vote. If you want to have a right to vote, you have to vote. If you want to save our democracy, you have to vote. If you want a better educational system, you have to vote. If you want to end homelessness, you have to vote. If you are concerned about women reproductive rights, you have to vote. If you want billionaires and millionaire corporations to pay their fair share, you have to vote. If you want better food and great farmers, you have to vote. If you want clean water, clean air, fresh water, if you want to end the filibuster, we have to vote. If you want to end the electoral college, and if you want to end gerrymandering, and if you want to end student debt, and if you want student debt relief, we have to vote.
So the last word is, please go out and vote Tuesday. Vote Tuesday, vote, vote, vote. We have 1 minute and it's almost over. It was 9 o'clock on the head now. Thank you all. It was a nice show. We had 2 great people. You all have been wonderful hosts. We will see you all next Sunday with our Voices, the People's Media. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right.